Welcome, everyone, to another episode of On The Flipside. Every Monday, I host an episode of either mindset, and every other Monday after that, we talk about any topic in real estate. So I'm so excited about today's topic because we are going to be talking about how you can take control of your vision. And my name is Diana Lizarazo, and today's guest speaker is Deb Schouls-Sluys. I'm so excited to have Debbie on. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. It's my favorite topic, so I'm excited.
Awesome. So let's just get started with just telling the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm a mom of 4. I have 3 grandbabies. I live in Ontario, Canada, and my background in business was in the not-for-profit. So I was a not-for-profit director of a multi-site childcare organization. And then I started my company called Dare to Declare. You can see it on the screen there. And personal development and empowerment for particularly women. And I started really looking at my field with educators, but now it's morphed into men and women, but with an expertise in vision boards. So I have an in-person studio, which that became really complicated when COVID hit, and I couldn't do my vision boards in person anymore. And so then I pivoted like thousands and thousands of people to be the online space. And that gave me the opportunity to then create an academy. So now I do in-person workshops, I do retreats, and I teach other coaches, entrepreneurs how to incorporate vision boards to expand their clients' impact and multiply their revenue.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. So let's get started because I think probably there are many people who don't even know what vision boards are. So do you want to just tell us like how that works, what its purpose is, anything you think is important that we should know?
Yeah. So, well, I like to relate it back to like your earliest memory that as a kid, probably someone asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so we, even in those, early 8 stages of our life, we'd say, oh, I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a teacher. I want to be a mom. I want to be, in real estate. I want to sell property, but, I want to be a princess. I want to be an astronaut. And nothing was, focused on the how. It was just like, that's what I want to be. And you could picture it as a kid. So what the vision board is, it's a grown-up version of that. It's still very playful, but what we do is we get to put down what it is that we want for our life, not just occupation, but for all areas of our life. What do we want for relationships? What do we want in terms of our spirituality? What do we want for our personal overall well-being? So all of that gets to be placed on this vision board in a very tangible way so that they're actual images that you can focus on every day. And again, people probably realize that they've done this and then don't realize how they've actually attracted it. Or maybe you do, but some people will say, I wrote down one time that I wanted to do this and I just kind of tucked it away. And then I found it like 10 years later and it actually came true. I was talking to a gentleman, actually, he's from Iran. And he said as a little boy, he always dreamed to coming either to United States, Canada, or Australia. And he was like in a very impoverished situation, very rural village, but he had an atlas and he would look and he would study all the names of big cities in the United States. Anyways, he now lives in the United States. He's the only one in his family, but he had that vision as a little boy and he could picture it. He said, I could picture what it'd be like. He says, my life right now, that's what I pictured as a little boy. And he would journal and write it out. So that's what it is. It's getting really clear on what you want and putting them visible on a board.
That's amazing. And it even just sounds like the vision board even helps you to get more obsessed, I guess, about that is what you want and just being able to see it. And like you said, that he was, writing things down even. So it even seemed like an obsession that he just thought about it all the time and would probably, it's almost like you have blinders to that, your eyes are probably always focused to that, what you want.
For sure. And, we only move for 2 reasons, pain or pleasure. And so as a little boy, he felt the pain of being in poverty. Mm-hmm. And so that's where he got obsessed. And it was interesting. It's so funny that you brought this up because we were having that conversation, he and I, because I said, you know, you can do it because you already did it. You did it as a little boy. You created the life you're living right now. So why do you think you can't do it again? Because now he's plateaued and he wants to go to the next level in terms of wealth and his career, and he's afraid. And, you know, what you and I know is that you can get afraid, not of going to the next level, but of losing what you already had. Sometimes starting from nothing, it's scary, but you've really got nothing to lose. Whereas, you know, he is an immigrant, he is, you know, a newcomer into a new country. And so now you're hanging on tight to what you have. And then to create that next vision, all of it is definitely can be a very scary prospect, but that's how it works. It's by, like you said, getting obsessed. And I love that word obsessed because it has a connotation. Some people might even think of it negative. Like, you know how that you're like, they'll say that person's obsessed, like almost roll their eyes and like, they're too focused. Why? I don't know why people do that. There's probably a whole psychology around that. But what there is there's definitely emotion tied behind that. When you say like obsession feels like they're emotionally invested.
Yeah.
And that's what a vision board is.
That one thing. And
Pardon?
it's true. I said, all you can do is think about that one thing. It's just, it doesn't leave your mind. And it's funny you say that. I also actually didn't like the word obsessed at the beginning. I always thought of it as in a negative sense until even for myself, like getting into real estate, I can say that I didn't get to where I am without being obsessed. Like I realized I just all of a sudden became very obsessed with the idea, and I knew I could get it done. Like once I had the proof of concept or I just understood it, I just knew, became so obsessed about it. And just all my mind could do was think about real estate. So tell me about like the vision boards and like how exactly, like, or what do they need to do to be able to, let's say, make vision boards like successful for them? And maybe because I'm sure like you said, lots of people may do them or have done them or seen them, but what makes the difference between it working for them and for others that it just doesn't?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I would think, I'm just guessing about your people that might be watching this. They're probably very focused. They're probably also very ambitious, and they're probably have goals that are monetary. And that's just my guess. And that's awesome. However, the temptation is to put money on your vision board. And in fact, some vision board magazines actually have that. They'll have like a money tree, they'll have bags of money, they'll have like images of people doing this, you know, like with the money flying around. And that doesn't mean anything. And what I mean by that is the passageway through to your vision. So what I would challenge anyone watching this is go beyond the money. The money is your goal, but the vision is actually beyond that, which is what is it when you're at that monthly goal that you've set for yourself, the 50K, 100K, 250K, whatever it is per month that you are now manifesting, that you're achieving. What does that life look like? What do your relationships look like? What does your philanthropy, like your volunteering and being able to give back into the community look like and feel like? What does it look like in terms of your team? Are you speaking from stages? Do you have a beautiful bricks and mortar building? What does that all look and feel like? That's actually your vision. The money's the passageway through. That's the how. So that would be one thing that I would say. Often people make a mistake by putting that on their board. The other thing is, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna add on to that's a great point that you make, because I think when, let's say you're in a miserable place, let's say, maybe money kind of does help, or you're thinking about like, oh, paying off the bills or not having to get stuck to something I don't like. But I can tell you that I felt that way once I went full-time into real estate and I was making good enough money, and then I just thought like, oh, the next step is I should probably increase my income. Like I need to increase the business. And exactly what you said happened to me. Like I was not motivated by the money at all. I was struggling. I didn't increase my income at all, or I think maybe a very small amount. And just because, like you said, I was picturing like I felt like maybe it must have been an obligation. I was like, oh, okay, if I could do this part-time as a real estate investor. Now I'm full-time. I should probably be like more than doubling my income because, that just logically, I would say, made sense to me, but it didn't make sense to like my emotions were just like, so.
That's
So I just
right.
wanted to add on that because I think it is very true. I think at the beginning, though, a lot of people may think about money because they're more thinking, I think, like just getting those bills paid off or the struggles or these kind of things. Whereas but then a lot of it, like if you look past that and you're looking at, like you said, the relationships, the friendships, the lifestyle, and it's like, are you happy where you are? Then you start realizing, okay, I need that money to get me to that. It could, everything's run by money. So usually money is involved to make whatever you need happen for you.
It's true. And what can happen as well is maybe you're gifted a house. Perhaps you're gifted, like, this is what is so remarkable about you get to put it out there and get into action, but then be open to receive how it shows up. So I'm not saying you don't have a responsibility to act but it's also remarkable how sometimes what you are looking for you may not have to go in and put down the credit card.
Mhm.
It might come to you in an entirely different way. And I think when you're just focused on the money versus what's past it and how you'll feel, like, excuse me, you gave me a really good example about paying off your bills. So, excuse me, if you have a mortgage and you're way just buried underneath payments and you're just feeling it's really heavy, what will that feel like to be mortgage free?
Mhm.
Freedom, right? And then you can take that money and what else are you going to do with it? Go on family trips, gift your friends, whatever else it is that you decide you want to do with that. So it's beyond the mortgage payment, beyond the, credit card payment, whatever that might be.
100%, completely agree. And so it sounded like you had another point that you wanted to also address.
Yeah. So I think what we were talking about is how to make a vision board that works. And so sometimes people try to put as much on the vision board as possible in terms of, and actually people will call it a collage. It's been very interesting. I haven't said this publicly yet, but I've been playing around with the AI stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been asking it questions about vision boards. And actually, most of what's been coming up, in my opinion, is wrong.
Oh, so it's a very easy way to show even how things are being misinterpreted about vision boards, because obviously AI is grabbing it from online. So it's just grabbing all that information. And so it's even basically saying that it's so misinterpreted. And that's probably why, for example, vision boards may not work, because the interpretation is not exactly, for example, the way you see it.
Yeah, and the way that we do it is very unique. And one thing it talks about is it really talks more about the doing than the being. And these three words may be really helpful for anyone that's listening. You might want to write these down. Most people think about a vision board as what I want to have, with the stuff I want to have. It's very materialistic. And actually, that's why sometimes people don't do them, because they're like, I'm not materialistic. And then what do I need to do to have that stuff? And that's another reason people get turned off, because it's like, this just feels like hustle and grind. It feels like goal setting. It feels like hard work. It just feels like it's all about the doing and getting. And then at the end, like the weekend, I'll be happy. And we flip that on its head. So a vision board, it's very radical in that it begins with your being. So who do you get to be? And you and I, we're doing work on our self-image, and that has to do so much with mindset. And that gets to be represented on the board, which is one of the reasons why I encourage my clients to actually have a picture of themselves on the board in a happy time. And it be the foundational piece, the centerpiece of their vision board. And everything else kind of, spiders off of that, webs off that, where it's like, who do you get to be in this beautiful home? Who do you get to be perhaps in this fun sports car? Who do you get to be on this beautiful vacation? Who do you get to be learning new things? Who do you get to be your most highest spiritual self, or whatever the areas might be? So it's all about your being in the vision board and see how that, again, that gets you obsessed, that gets you emotional, that gets your feelings jazzed up, which means we get in that higher vibration. We haven't even talked about the universal laws, but then we get to the doing, which are the goals. And so those come off the vision board, but they're not completely embedded in it. They're more of a secondary activity that comes off the vision board. And then the material things, as I said, we just hold loosely, like how they decide to show up. Because what I find is that the universe, God, is like, I believe he has a sense of humor, and things come sometimes in very unexpected ways and comes from the side. It might not be coming straight forward that you're like, oh, here it comes. I can see it coming. Oh no, it's like, and it's like, there it is. And you're like, oh my goodness, this is what I've been wanting. And I didn't even see it coming. And it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, those are great points. And do you want to share your story? Because that reminds me of your story that you said where something came to you, you completely pushed it off, didn't think, and then finally came in. Would you like to share that story? Because I find that like a really funny story, and like that, like showing that things just kind of come into you, and even sometimes we just push it away because we don't realize we're getting what we want, just not in the specific way we think of it.
Yeah, for sure. And so you and I are in a coaching program together. It's how we know each other. And at a retreat this past fall, actually in October, I declared out loud at that retreat, I will do vision board retreats abroad with my own magazine. Because to date, well, with COVID, as I said, I did them online, and then I wasn't able to travel because I'm a big proponent of paper. And I usually take my husband's pickup truck full of magazines to wherever I go when I do them in person. So I was like, how am I going to do that when I travel into the United States, to Europe, wherever I'm going to be going, because my company's growing. And so I thought, I need my own magazine, but I don't know how to do that. And then so that's happening. I declared that. And then I had a client of mine who had a retreat booked with one of her clients. And she said, Deb, I can't do it. And she had multiple tragedies happen within her life. Her mom passed away suddenly. She was part of the hurricane that happened in Florida. Her home was destroyed. And every time one of these tragedies happened, she reached out to me. She said, can you please take on my client and do this retreat, which is in the United States. It's in Cape Cod. It's with beautiful setting, like 5-star, 6-star resort setting. And I said no. And the reason I said no was because I had my own personal retreat that I had paid minimal money for, but still I paid an investment in Canada that I was supposed to go that same weekend. And I was hanging really tight to the fact that I'd made that commitment. I'd paid that money. So I kept saying no to my client. And it wasn't until I had 2 of my fellow colleagues from my mastermind literally take the screen and go, are you crazy? This is what you've been declaring. We heard you declare this out loud and you're saying no. And I was like, you're right. Oh my goodness. So when I released the money that I had spent on that retreat, I actually got to gift it to someone else. What a blessing that was. And then I got to say yes to my client, which again, what a blessing that was. Why was I so blinded that I couldn't see that I was actually going to help her? But I would also be helping myself. I got paid. I got to be in this gorgeous retreat setting. And the reason I got to do that, I'm just going to slide over, because in 4 weeks, I manifested my own Dare to Declare magazine. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even think that was going to be possible. But when I put that visionary outlook and I declared it, I reached out to a publisher. I said to her, hey, you've got your own magazine. Can you teach me? She's like, sure. I'm like, sure. She's like, you can do it. Within 4 weeks, I had 12 magazines packed in my carry-on, and I got to serve in Cape Cod, just outside of Boston. Yeah.
It's an amazing story. I love it because it just shows like that we have this view of what our expectations are and how we expect to see things. And like you said, the universe can just be so funny and just be like, oh no, I'm going to give it to you in this way. And you just kind of, it throws you for a loop. And sometimes you think that's probably not the right way. Or like you said, like other things kind of get in the way. So you think like, no, that can't be the right thing for me. And you realize, that, oh, what was I thinking?
After you see it, you can't not see it. I was like, oh, this was here the whole time. And it was like the universe going, and I was like, no, thanks. And it was like even bigger and better than what I expected. It's just, yeah, it's just extraordinary. And I teach this stuff. So that's why try to get the message out as clear and as often as possible to say that abundance is all around us.
Mm-hmm.
And we are like the racehorse with the blinders on. Sometimes we're just so focused on what's in front of us that we don't see all of this abundance that's there. And the more we become self-aware, so that's what a vision board does as well, is that it helps us get really clear on what we want. So I liken it to, do you remember the kids magazine called Highlighter? Does that
I don't
ring
know.
a bell?
I don't think so. Maybe.
Sometimes I have my doctor's office. I used to get a subscription when I was a kid. And in it, do you know, they have those kind of things for kids where it's like, there's pictures within the picture. So there's like a key at the bottom that says you have to find a wooden spoon. You have to find a picture of the cat, keys or whatever. So you have that on the bottom. And then on the picture above, you're like, oh, there it is. It's in the bark of the tree, or it's in. That's what I think a vision board does. It's the key at the bottom where you've gotten really clear to say, what am I looking for in my universe, in my big picture? Because it's sitting right there. It's sitting in the bark of the tree. But unless I know and I have my key really clear to say, I'm looking for this Porsche. And it's blue and it's got a hatchback, and it's like, unless you get really clear, you're not going to see it in the big picture.
I love that. That's a great example. Because it is true. You don't and I mean, even going to your story, right? It's like all of it comes together where it's like, you just don't see what's around you if you don't open up your eyes or remove the blinders, because sometimes you need to remove them to allow them to see and make sure you're not missing out on things. Because I think a lot of us really get focused on, this is how we expect things to happen. And so it's good that the obsession is there, but then at the same time is allowing it, but it doesn't have to be that way, like allowing it, this is just what I want, be it in whatever form it comes in.
Absolutely. Have you ever had it where, I'm sure you have, like you're at a wedding or at a birthday party, and you just feel so much love, and you just like, people are talking and it's just, there's no drama, no stress. It's just so fun. The music's going, the food's amazing, and you're just vibrating high. Like you're just like, so that doesn't just have to happen at a party. That's a feeling that you get to create every single day. And the way that you do that is by focusing daily, having connection with your vision board. So that's what a vision board can do for you, is it helps raise your vibration, raise your frequency, so that you're in that level. And when you're at that level, imagine, when you walk into a room and there's somebody that you can just tell they've got great energy, or actually, usually we notice people that don't, right? We're like, oh, I don't want to be near that person. They're having a bad
I feel like you
day.
notice the extremes, right? Either you, like you said, like the normal, like the regular people, you don't notice. But then like the super happy or super vibrating, you can just see they're like vibrating of like shining light and everything. Or the other way around, they're like the gloomy, and you're just like, oh, I'm gonna like let them be, because they're probably not having a good day or whatever it is.
So who are you attracted to? So you get to do the same, is that you are attracting it to you. And this is what the vision board gives you as well, is that it's like a tool that we used to use in childcare. We would talk about self-regulation, where little ones, we would teach them how to self-regulate, because otherwise they could just, turtle and just hide in a little box and want to be by themselves and try to be away from the world. Or they could just have a total meltdown and temper tantrum at the top of the thermometer, right? So the thermostat. So you want them to kind of be somewhere in between where, they're vibrating at a really great, safe level that also is attracting what they desire to them.
100%. And I love the way you describe the vision board, how it's like a picture of yourself happy, and then how you're saying, bringing everything out. And what's the question again? Answering the question of, who do you want to be able to? Was that what it was?
I guess who your highest being, like who you get to be.
Who you get to be. Yeah, I love that, because you're right. When you were talking about the other way, it sounds like a lot of work, or it sounds kind of exhausting, where in the approach you're taking, Who do you want to be? Like you said, like if you're putting those images up there, just looking at them will excite you, because it's just like, oh, that is exactly who I want to be. That is exactly what I want to do or be or whatever. So I love that. I just wanted to reemphasize that because I think that is a great approach, because exactly what you're saying, it's like the other way. It feels like I already have a job and you're giving me another job, like
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And so people will say, when's the best time to focus on your vision board? So the more often you can do it, even like just having it seep into your subconscious, the better. So I use it as my screensaver. I would put it like right now. You can see my 2022 is behind me, and the other one's hanging on the wall. But in your closet that you go into every day. So combine it with other habits. Like I used to put on the back of my toilet so that when I was brushing my teeth, I could see it in the mirror behind me. So, just so that it's not an extra thing you've got to do. But the best time of day is the evening before you go to sleep, because, well, as you know, like, I mean, if you've ever had this where you watch something scary or very involved, and then it's like it's showing up in your dreams and in your thoughts, instead, feed your mind, feed your subconscious, your dream state mind with your beautiful visions for what you want, because it's going to roll it over all night because it's looking for solutions. It's looking for opportunities for you that, oftentimes I wake up with such extraordinary ideas. Actually, my best thinking time, I don't know about you, Diana, but for me, it is between 7 and 9 a.m. That's I have like poop, 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 poop. And I think it's because my mind's been going all night while I've been dreaming and working on and raising my vibration. When I wake up, I'm just like, let's go.
I completely agree with you. I'm the same. I feel in the morning, in the sense of like, once I feel like I do yoga, like once I kind of like my mind wakes up, and usually the first thing I do is yoga. I hear you. I'm the same. I just feel like I'll think of things, and you just feel like I get very creative, or solutions will just come to me easier for certain things that I'm thinking about. So I completely agree with you there. And I like the what you were saying about, doing it at night. That makes sense, because it's like you have that in your mind, and then like that you're dreaming of it. I thought that was a very good example of like a horror movie, because I remember when I would watch a horror movie, I remember that we'd watch something, and afterwards I'd have to watch like a funny kind of movie, because I was just so like, my body was just like, couldn't go to sleep. So I find that that's a really good example to share, because it is true. You kind of you don't realize the impact of what you see, how much it impacts you in your day-to-day life. So I thought that was a great example. And so when you're saying about you have it everywhere, do you even do it, like, for example, in the car, or do you have it like in your wallet, or is it just like the main parts, like you said, like for you it looks like you have it in the office and like in your bedroom or something?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think everyone always carries their phone. So it's on my phone screensaver. So pretty much I do have it everywhere with me. The other thing that I would recommend, we've been talking a lot about vision, but is to create a goal or two goals from your vision board. So a vision board typically will have like all 7 of your life areas represented. And then you want to hone in on what is it that I want to begin action in. And one of the great ways to do that is to create affirmations. Have you talked to your audience about affirmations? Like that's
No,
a familiar.
I don't think we've talked about or gone into detail on affirmation.
Okay. So an affirmation is a statement that's said in the future tense, but it's about the future tense, but it's said in the present tense. So what I mean by that is, this is a protocol actually that Bob Proctor, Jack Canfield, who co-wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, they both use the same protocol, and it says, I'm so happy and grateful now that. So it's saying it as though it's already occurring in your life, even though you're talking about like your vision, your goal, that's a future tense. And so you want it to be specific, and you want it to be brief and be positive. So I can read mine. Mine right now is a monetary goal. Excuse me. And I say, I'm so happy and grateful that I earn 100K every month. Our clients and team are getting phenomenal results from my world-class service and sales ability. I am honest, direct, and loving. in all my communication, and I operate in opulent supply. It is done, and I love it. I say that and write it out. I haven't been writing it actually in a few weeks. I've been traveling a fair bit, but I say it every single day. And it's the power of this auto-suggestion. So if you think about how many times, if you're a female, that the idea of being pretty is important to success. Like, for example, it's just one thing, right? It's just one belief that our society holds, that little girls should be pretty. And so that gets told and told and told in various ways, through commercials, through, well-meaning extended family members, at church or whatever it is. And so it's almost like a fossil where it gets calcified. And so the way that gets broken open, or it gets like a ball of yarn that gets unwound, is by saying this affirmation that is replacing these kinds of thoughts that we have that have gotten in the way of our own self-image, of our own self-worth. And so we are creating new beliefs. It's one thing to dispel old beliefs. Like, first we got to dig them out and go, oh my gosh, this has been running my life. I had no idea. That little girl, that 5-year-old little girl, she's been running the show, and I've been afraid this whole time of showing up because I got bullied in grade 2 or whatever it might be. I mean, there's people have had trauma and whatever, but once we figure it out, then we're holding it and going, okay, now what? So we can get rid of it, but then we want to replace it. And that's where a vision board comes in, that you're clear on what you want for your life. You create a goal and you create that affirmation so that you start to create a new, you're probably too young, but remember the cassette tapes, right? You want to have the new thread, you want to have the new ribbon of the cassette tape that you got playing in your mind. And that then will also support you when you start to see opportunities, that it just becomes natural. Like, it's now natural for me to desire to earn 100K a month. That would have been completely, in fact, even a year ago, that would have been like, okay, you like put me in, give me medication. I'm this isn't even sane, and now it's like, no, I'm saying it, and it's normalizing it, and it's becoming part of my being.
Yeah, I love it. Those are great examples. And it's like we have to do like that, a brainwashing, right? It's like, what do we have inside our minds that we don't like? And we want to put it in put in the good in our minds. And even I think the impact that words have, I think a lot of people don't realize the impact of things. And they say, for example, like, I feel like a lot of people say like, oh, I don't care, this doesn't bother me or whatever. But then that you go through I feel like you go through certain periods of times, right? Where, like, let's say as a kid, let's say someone's just calling you stupid, and you're like joking, you're pushing it off. But then at a certain time, you do see that flip where you do believe it, and either it starts making you angry and it's like not even a joke anymore, and you go through that point of that, like, it's upsetting you to hear it, or you start because you're starting to believe it. And so a lot of people, I don't think a lot of people realize that, like, that if we're hearing so much let's say negative, or something that we don't like, and it's in there going, it will just all of a sudden you don't realize, from one day to the next, you're actually believing whatever it is that you thought you didn't care if someone said. And then now, like, to remove it, you're just like, oh, trying to get that out of your mind. And I think, like you said, I think it's fine, get it, if you can get it out, great, but really putting in what you do want instead of removing it, or I mean, it will remove itself. So I thought that was a great point, because I think there's lots of situations where we don't realize how the outside world is brainwashing us to think certain things depending on what happens into our environment. And it's really up to us to be like, okay, do I want that? Do I want to believe that? Is that something I want to believe? Or what do I actually want to believe? And like that repetition of affirmations, sometimes I feel like once you start understanding that, I felt like, especially for me, affirmations made more sense to do them, because I could say before I never had any interest in doing affirmations, because I think I had that mentality like, oh, I don't care, I'm good. I have a good mentality, whatever it is. But then as soon as you start like digging apart yourself and kind of seeing who you are and seeing what you have inside you, and even just thinking of circumstances, I think of when you've seen this kind of brainwash, like other people telling you things so much, so repetitively, that all of a sudden you realize, oh wow, they did implant things into my mind without me realizing and thinking it would be any harm, until it got to that point of where it's affecting me in a way that I don't want it to be affecting me. So I thought that was, yeah, I thought that was a really great point, and it shows like that the importance of affirmations, and what, like why you should do it, and like that, pick something that you want to what you want to just like that brainwash you. Time to wash the brain a little, you know.
For sure. Something that came up for me, and this is a couple of years ago. So yes, I mean, there's that bullying, that direct bullying, but there's also the little child who something happened and they decided what that meant. Right.
Mhm.
So, and that you've been living with that decision, and that decision has been informing your beliefs and therefore informing your behavior and your results. So what I discovered when my first grandson was born, I had this epiphany. So he's actually 3. So this would be going almost 3 years ago, was that in my mind's eye, I saw myself as a baby, as the only term I can call it is raggedy, like dirty, tired, unkept. And I saw my grandson as this perfect cherub. Like he was like this, could have wings growing out of the back. Like he was just like smelly, like a baby, gorgeous, chubby gorgeousness. Right. And I was like, oh, I can see, like, I'm seeing myself as this raggedy baby. Why? Because I was told, and I was adopted, and I came to my parents at 6 months old. And when I came from the foster home, I was exactly all those things. I was tired. I was dirty. And I was handed over by the children's aid to my parents. And mind you, they cleaned me up and they put me in bed. But that's what I was told multiple times. That's how I arrived. And when I didn't realize until like I'm in my 50s now, wow, that raggedy baby and that image and the decision I made about myself and my self-worth has been so deep that I have been playing over and over, like, please accept me, please love me. I don't want to be a raggedy baby. And just trying to have people's attention and wow, that epiphany blew my mind when I realized I dug it out and held it up, as I said. And it was like, okay, I don't want that anymore. And so I went through this little kind of a role play where I acted as though I was born and my birth mother gave myself to me and I was safe and I was, and so just changing that. But that's also where affirmations come in, is like in terms of self-worth and who do I get to be? And that's where the whole idea of like the mindset, it's so powerful, because who I decide I am consciously now, not on a subconscious, once you get the conscious piece and I get to reprogram that, actually informs my results, which is, what do I want? I want this beautiful vision for this best life.
Mm-hmm. And another great point that I think like basically was showing that there's things in our lives that can happen in young, and like you said, all this time later, finally it comes out and you just don't know even in how many other situations it's impacted you until that point in time. So I think that's also important. It's like that, like there is so much in our childhood as young that, it's good to start like trying to unpack and find, because like that, like who knows in what other situations you've gone through, and that you didn't realize that's that situation could impact it or could have been different just because of that thought that you have in yourself.
For sure. And I think that it's not about staying in that victim mode to say, oh my word, my life was crap. Like, look at this is, but rather to say, I get to take responsibility. Now that I know, I can't not know. Just like we talked about earlier with the magazine and the retreat. Like, now that I know. So I know this now. So what am I going to do about it? And that's where, again, going back to the idea of the vision board, is you get to be intentional. It's not like you're just at the whim of these subconscious beliefs that you've been holding all your life, or at the events that have been happening, or the crappy job now that you're in, or whatever else. We can blame everyone else, but we got to get out of the blame game and get into taking responsibility, because that's where our power lies, in how we decide to respond to life. And one of the ways that we can respond is about getting intentional and dreaming. And it is scary. I've said that before. When you don't know how this is going to happen, putting something out, thinking, well, I don't want to get disappointed. What if I put this out and it doesn't happen? Like,
100%.
Yeah.
And I think it's just great also, when you're like that, when you're putting it out there and you're finding out what or indirectly like that, like not knowing, not having the awareness, and then all of a sudden you bring that awareness to the situation by sometimes like that, usually it's by chance, I feel like, but then you're putting the intentions out there, at least for us, like in our groups now, it's a lot, you're always thinking about everything you do, or at least I don't know about you, but I feel like everything I do nowadays is just like, what was that? Did I do that the right way? Is this like, am I, like, I feel like I'm traumatized every single time to be but it's exciting is actually what I wanted to say. I find it super exciting that you can actually now take control of your life. And like you said, not be the victim, but actually now it's like, oh my God, I get to decide, what I'm putting in my mind or what I want to do and what it is that I want. To me, it's like that, like I'm sure with you, when once you saw that thing or you're like, you had the epiphany, I think at the same time, it was also exciting because you're like, wow, I can remove that from my life and now put something else. And you're like, now who can I think, like, what can I think about? Who can I be? What can I do about that? And it actually, I feel like that is, if anything, a motivator. But like you said, it's also scary at the same time. It's like motivating, exciting, but there's always that fear because at the same time, our minds don't want to change. And they're kind of like, are you sure you want to change that thought process? That's probably not something you want to do. And then you have the fears come in. But like I feel the excitement will help overpower that or give that motivation to want to help you move forward in the way that you want to, because like that is like now you have the control, you've given yourself the control to be able to do what it is that you want. What do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that if someone's wondering, oh, this sounds like a lot, that they're talking about, one of the first places to begin is discovering who you are. And there's different tests online. Like there's one that's an ancient tool called the Enneagram, ENNEAGRAM, and it's free. And there are coaches that actually specialize in it. But and ask for feedback. I just did this actually. I'm going to a retreat. And part of my homework for this retreat I'm taking is their team asked me to ask 3 colleagues, what am I most brilliant at, and what weaknesses are holding me back from my success. The responses were awesome. A little bit like, be careful what you wish for, but it was really good because it teaches me about myself, and I get to accept the things that I am brilliant at. I'm looking, oh, there's some common themes here. All 3 of them said this, so this must be true. And here's some things, wow, that are in my blinders that I didn't even realize that I'm obviously showing, demonstrating, and what can I do to work on that, to change that? So your success really begins internal. And so that's where I would start to really figure out who you are. Hire someone like Diana, find a coach that can support you to dig in, to discover these things, and then get clear on what it is that you want.
100%. I love it. I love that exercise. I think it is good that, like you're saying, for people to do that, or even any tips if they want to try to take a stab at creating their own little vision board or like that. Because I know you did that with me. We had like a little mini vision board kind of thing. It wasn't like the full-fledged one. Yeah. Is there any tips if they want to create like, or like, yeah, or do you want to explain that one if like how that works? That's like a nice mini version.
So I call it a power word. So I think that's what you did, Diana. I walked our coaching group through that, and it's about creating a single word for your year. And again, we're not even, through the first quarter, so it's not too late. And I remember when, as I said, COVID hit, and I had just given my retirement notice. I didn't know about COVID actually. And I had given notice for my 30-year career to step full-time into my company that I was doing in-person workshops. And I had my, excuse my language, moment. And I was like, oh my word. But my word that year was generous. And so when I was super challenged by hiring my successor, cleaning up after 30 years of being in an office and in an organization, and then getting them ready for COVID life, I just kept thinking, what would my most generous self do? So think of it as it may be a verb, something that it's a way of being. Like, who do you get to be? So for me, my word this year is expectation. So I am in a continual state of expectation. I'm expecting that God, the universe, is sending me exactly what is supposed to be. And so that also is gratitude. And so think of a word that feels motivating. It feels positive. Now, sometimes people want to give themselves words that kind of beat them up. Like they're like, I need to work out. I need to lose weight. I need to, whatever it is. And then I'm like, how does that make you feel? Like crappy.
Like, does
And
that
so,
really excite you?
right? It's not like you're going to whip yourself into submission. Like, again, like I said, we move for two reasons, pain or pleasure. So have the word inspire you so that who is that higher version of you that she gets to be? So then what you can do is you can create a card, just have it. I mean, you could do it as simple as a Post-it note. Oh, that's awesome. You want to explain yours?
Mine is expansion. So I don't know if you could see it, everything, but it's about, like, I picked different areas, some on the business side and some like that. For me, I've been very interested in spiritual expansion. So I have one for spiritual expansion, and then same thing on the business side. Also, just expanding more, going more, getting to know a lot more people, growing the community. And so I have those images, and then I have a family one because it's always good to expand the family. And
sure.
so yeah, those are mine. And same thing, it was funny I remember you said it before too, because I think my previous word was something that was, I felt like, yeah, more like work related kind of word, like it didn't excite me, where like expansion excites me. I'm like, if I can expand in all areas of my life, and just like happiness in the family, and just like making sure we can have the best that we can in our family. And same thing in the business, just expanding and every part. Like, I guess that's why I have all those, because it was like in my mind I want to expand. And that's like the spiritual side, like just expanding with my mind, expanding with like the family, and same thing on the business. I just really want to grow as a person as a whole. And I really like when you got us to do that. I loved it, because like you said, it excites you, right? And when I found that word that excited me, it was just so easy to create.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's how it should feel. It should feel exciting. And also that it moves you into action, so that it's not just like a piece of art. So that's the difference between excited. Like inspiring can be like, oh, that's very nice, I just see that. And no, you want it to, like, expansion is like, it's a moving word. It's like a flow. It's like growing and oscillating, and so it feels that way. So it will move you into the constant state of expansion. So that's great. I love that word.
Yeah, and it's exactly true what you say. These things in a vision, like in a bigger vision board, is also the same, where it's just like you look at it and you feel like you have to get up. Okay, let's do something, about it, because It's just like you want to be there, you want to see that, and you're just, okay, let me ask myself a question of how I'm like what I need to do today to get closer to that vision that I see. And yeah, so it is like I love that. It just like if you, and I think that's, I guess, a good way for you to find out if the word is right for you. Like if that word or the images, even like when you're looking, I think it's maybe even more the image, because when I was looking for like what is the definition of expansion for me and like what images, and then when I look at these images, I was like, oh yeah. And even I even remember after that I was like, I need to, for example, like message people in the business, in like my business, and I was wanting to get more stuff done in the business, and I mean in all aspects. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm in fusion is because of I just love like I just want to expand more mentally, spiritually, just because I find it so fascinating.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which includes the idea that it starts with study. So as I said earlier, the first place to study is study yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then study others, and then study yourself in relation to others. Mm-hmm. So I think that can take years, but that will benefit you so greatly, is that when you have an understanding of yourself, it also creates, I don't know if you have this, Diana, but I have it where it humbles me. Mm-hmm. Where I realize that my ego has been running the show, and that it gives me the state of humility that I realize how much I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought of that, but yeah, that's a very good point. It does humble you because you just feel like, oh wow, I'm like this little thing in this massive world, and there's just always so much to learn, or there's always so much, even in ourselves. Like basically, is also what you're saying. It's like you think you know yourself, not until you start digging and learning, and you're just like, oh wow. Or like you said, even asking people on the outside, because I also did a similar exercise of asking different types of people how they saw me. And it was so interesting to see, because it's also even different groups of people see you in different ways. And they saw me in ways that I was actually shocked by, and I didn't know. And I can tell you one, actually, I found one really funny was, because there's like certain people that think I'm like very tough, very like kind of like strict, I guess, because I come from a background of sports and stuff. So it's very like I love being like I love discipline, like the whole thing, like discipline and all this stuff, like having schedules and stuff. Like I love it. I love organization and all that. But then that comes with, I think, you seem like a cold kind of person, right? Or that's how I thought people saw me around. And I thought, for example, like I never help people enough, because I just feel like of this image that I felt like people always saw of me. And then I remember one person is just like, oh, you're so caring and you're so helpful. And I'm like, you see that? I was like, you do think that? I was in shock. I was like, I thought people thought I was like this cold person, that was, or not cold, but like just like a very like, and I'm just like, no, there's like I'm, they can come together. I don't know.
Absolutely. And I think it's like saying to someone, like, if they're worried that they're vain, they're probably not conceited or vain if you're worried about it. And the same thing with you is that, if you're already mindful of that and you're coming from your heart, then mm-hmm. that energy, it's not so much, the facade, but more people can feel your energy and your authenticity. And the message can be delivered in different ways, but it's the feeling that people have mm-hmm. from you. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So would you like, if people want to get in contact with you, how can they contact you? Is there anything you'd like to promote or tell the audience?
Sure. So if you go to my website, it's my name, debbiesluys.com, or dare, the number 2, declare.com. And on the homepage, you'll see there's a couple of assets, but one, it's a fun quiz. And so the framework of doing a vision board is dream, discover, declare. And so the quiz actually is made up of those 3 parts. It only takes about 2 minutes to do, but how big do you dream? How well do you discover? And how clearly do you declare? And so just to give yourself a little score to see, you know, all these things we've been talking about with visioning and declaring and affirmations, like, you know, where are you on that scale? So it will give you a score. And then what it will do is it will give you an opportunity to download some PDFs to support you with any challenges you might be experiencing. And then it also will give you videos. There's a series of videos as well, if you want, that will drip, I think, couple times a week or whatever to support you with that too. So it's just a really nice little asset that will support you in this whole process. And that's on my homepage of my website as well. If you want to chat further, if there's something that you'd like to do personally, a vision board, or your company. So I've actually worked a lot with real estate teams. The owners have hired me to come in and work with their teams, because anybody that it works in real estate, you are a dream worker. That's what you do. You walk in with your client and say, imagine the possibility for this space. And so, that's where there's this really good synergy with creating visions and real estate. Absolutely. So if you'd like to have a further conversation, there's on my homepage as well. You can find my contact and book a call.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. I loved what we talked about. I think that's going to be very exciting. Everyone should do the test, because I think that in itself will be a nice little self-discovery of yourself and seeing where you're at. And if you guys are interested in chatting with Debbie, she will be tagged also on this video, so you'll be able to reach her in that way. And if you guys love my shows, send in some likes, follow, share them if you find the information important. And thank you so much, Debbie. It was so awesome to chat with you and just hear what you have to say. You always bring such great and amazing information. Thanks so much.
Thank you. It was my honor. I had a blast.
Awesome. We'll see everyone in the next episode. Bye, everyone. Bye, Debbie.